listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
How's it going, everyone? Fins fans, welcome in. Special edition here today. It is Thanksgiving, and we wish all of you guys a happy Thanksgiving. Andrew, I'm going to ask you one thing about Thanksgiving. What is your favorite Thanksgiving food now that we're on the topic of it?
Well, I don't know if everyone has this food for Thanksgiving, but mac and cheese, especially the one that my mom makes, perfect. So yeah, I would say that. And of course, classics, you got turkey and stuffing and all that kind of stuff. It's great.
100%. I'm going to have to go. And again, I don't know if everyone has this on their thing, but I really like a good steak with mashed potatoes. But I like turkey as well. So let's get into, and make sure you guys drop your favorite Thanksgiving food down in the YouTube chat below. We'll be looking at those over in the chat. But let's talk about this game, Andrew. The Packers, first off, let's talk about how it's going to be today. So in Miami right now, it is warm. It is 81 degrees down there. And for those of us in South Florida, we know there was a cold front this week, but we are going to be into extra cold weather into Green Bay. And right now in Green Bay, Wisconsin, it is freezing with a weather currently of 29 degrees. But come game time, it is going to drop down to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. So should be very cold and a big test for Tua, as we've seen him struggle in.
Yeah, and real quick, last week, Tua mentioned that he wanted to kill some narratives and make sure that this game would be different than the other games he's played up there in Green Bay or in Buffalo, because as we know, they have mightily struggled in this colder weather, especially in the late stages of the season like we're starting to approach now. This could definitely be a tough game, but if Tua is able to turn this around, I think that there is going to be a lot more hope for this Dolphins team, because we talked about last week some playoff scenarios with regards to where the team is at right now. And we know it's not impossible, but it's going to be a tough road ahead. And I think that all starts today with hopefully a win on primetime against the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, but to get that win, the Packers defense ranks top 5 in every single category. So, Andrew, talk a little bit about the Packers defense and what do the Dolphins need to do to be able to score on it?
Well, we know the Packers picked up Xavier McKinney this offseason from the Giants, and he currently is actually the interceptions leader in the NFL. So that was definitely a good pickup for them, and he's helped kind of command this defense in a way that the Packers really hadn't had in prior seasons. Good news, though, for the Dolphins, we're going to see Jair Alexander will be out with a knee injury today, so that's one less scary corner they're going to have to worry about. And defensive line as well. Of course, we're always going to be scared about pressure on Tua because of his prior injuries and things like that. I think that there's a way that if our offensive line is healthy and goes into the game healthy, like it looks like they're going to be today, we're going to have a much easier time slowing down this defensive line. I would say that I guess the key is make sure – or I would say let Tyreek and let Waddle do their job, because they're the shiftiest and the fastest receivers in the league, and they know how to work around these tight defenses. So let them do their job, and let Tua take the ball from there. And, of course, don't sack him. That would be kind of nice.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Xavier McKinney, 7 interceptions. That ties with 7 other cornerbacks as the leading in interceptions. And you mentioned the D line. I think one guy we really have to focus on is Rashawn Gary. He ranks within the top 3 in a lot of statistical categories on the D line. Number 1 in getting after pressure on the quarterback. So we're going to see a lot of 4-3 defensive schemes from that. That's what they do on 72% of snaps. They like to bring pressure, they like to blitz, and this defense doesn't let up much points. So I think what you mentioned with the D line, Rashawn Gary, make sure we watch out for him. But Andrew, let's twist it over to the Dolphins this week. You mentioned Tua wanting to change that narrative and him wanting to be able to prove the naysayers wrong, go into a cold weather environment deep into November, prime time game on the road and try to win the game, which is something that we haven't seen him do as a Miami Dolphin. You mentioned him just giving it to Waddle and Hill a lot. And we saw that with his 40 pass attempts last week. So, do you think that that's going to be the strategy we need to pose on offense again? Because I personally believe that with the secondary the team has, running the football might be the strategy.
Um, I liked what I saw last week. I think that Tua looked a lot smarter out there. I think that the offensive coaching staff kind of finally figured out how to work with this new version of Tua and this new version of this Dolphins offense. I think you're right. Of course, we have 2 running backs that are plenty capable of carrying through this Packers defense. So I think that, yes, we're always going to be looking for them to make a difference. But I still think just if we want to win this game, and I mentioned this last week, Packers are going to be putting up a lot of points. I mean, remember, they're 8-3. They're obviously a better team theoretically on paper. And I think that if they're going to just keep scoring points after points, because we've seen defense struggle a bit in the last couple of weeks, then I think that the way to go is let Waddle and Hill do their thing, and let's hope that Tua can make some good passes to them. And just keep scoring points, because I don't think this is going to be a low-scoring game in any way. So, yeah, we just can't let the Packers run away with it, I guess would be my theory. But running the ball is all good if it ends up being a tight game.
Yeah, and you mentioned them scoring a lot. Last week they scored their season high with 38 points at home against a good San Fran defense. Something that we've seen them drop off, but still not a defense who's going to give up 35 plus every game. And the Packers were able to score their season high against them. Now, I want to turn it over a little bit to this Packers offense. They just like to pound with Josh Jacobs, someone who came over from the Las Vegas Raiders. Not too much of a reception back, more of a halfback, where they're just going to want to give him the ball and he is going to just they're just going to pound it to him and he's going to stack and rack up first downs. You look at his stats and you can't do anything but be amazed with what he's done this season. Last game in particular, having 3 touchdowns. He has 202 carries for 944 yards, which ranks as the 3rd most yards in the NFL. That's 5 yards a carry, which is on the upper half of most running backs. How do the Dolphins stop him, Andrew?
Well, the one thing I want to say is he's about to have his 4th season in his career with 1,000+ rushing yards. And his touchdowns are also on the higher end of his career. So I think that the Packers have learned to rely on him a little bit, because we saw last year, of course, Jordan Love was very good, and that team showed a lot of promise and won games. However, this year's team, they have such a better array of talent that they can utilize for this offense. And I think that Josh Jacobs is going to be scary for the Dolphins, because you're always going to be looking for Josh Jacobs, who's a star running back, to be cutting up the middle or going wherever, while you have one of the best young quarterbacks in the league in Jordan Love in the backfield directing traffic and looking for some of his star wide receivers. This is going to be a tough game for the Dolphins defense in a lot of ways. And like I said, they haven't been playing the best. They've been looking better the last couple of weeks. And we said a couple of weeks ago during one of their latest losses that the Dolphins defense was the best part of the last couple of these games. But I think that they're going to need an absolutely outstanding game to keep the Packers offense in check, because I think that they have a lot of potential to mess up the Dolphins real bad.
Yeah, I think forcing, as you mentioned there, Josh Jacobs is going to be scary. He's going to have a lot of yards no matter what. But forcing him out to the perimeter is something that I think the Dolphins should really focus on, using that blitz more outside to force Jacobs more outside. I mean, more inside the blitz. And when you put him to the perimeter, he can't really utilize much room. And I hope that we were able to do that, get some stops on
Yeah.
Jacobs. So, Andrew, I want to touch a little bit more on this Packers offense because we haven't talked about them aside from Josh Jacobs. Someone who I think we should highlight is Jaden Reed, the second year wide receiver out of Michigan State. He had a really strong start to the season, but has slowed down lately. And we've seen the Packers turn more towards Romeo Doubs, who is sort of a veteran there. He was there in the Rodgers days with Aaron Rodgers. So, do you think that Jaden Reed is going to be a problem, or are the Packers going to continue uh, giving having Romeo Doubs be the number one target?
Well, from what we've seen from the last couple of weeks, anyone can be a problem for the Dolphins. I don't think they're picking and choosing if they want the star players to have a good game or not. I think that if there's one slip up, someone could have a hell of a game today. So I just think that I think they're going to perform well. I think that the Packers have probably already figured out how to get around some of the key stronger points of this Packers Dolphins defense. So I think that that's going to be a bit of a problem. But in terms of keeping passing limited, we need to have pressure on Jordan Love, because we've seen Chop Robinson had an amazing game last week. We saw that defensive line come alive. That is pretty much going to be the biggest thing we need to keep this Dolphins offense in check. Of course, you're still going to have Josh Jacobs running circles around us, but if we can keep Jordan Love away from the passing game, especially the deep passing games to Jaden Reed, who can get open downfield very easily, we just got to get that pressure on him. And I'm expecting Chop Robinson to have another pretty good game this week.
100% agree with you. Now, Andrew, before we get into the predictions and to the playoff scenarios, I wanted to touch a little bit on one other thing, and that is the Dolphins and Daniel Jones are closing in on a contract for him to be the
Oh,
backup.
Daniel Jones signed with the Vikings yesterday.
Oh yes, he signed with the Vikings yesterday. But it was reported that he was close to a deal with the Dolphins. Was Daniel Jones? So let's go into overall predictions for the game. Andrew, what do you think?
Uh,
How do you think this game's
Again, I'm going to say again, high scoring game. I think that it's going to be tough for that Dolphins defense out there, especially in the cold weather. And with Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs, you never know which one is going to try to eat up the defense. Listen, and I hate to say it because this game is so important for playoff implications and things like that. But again, Packers just look like such a good team, and I'd love to see the Dolphins come out with a win here. I will say that it will be 34 to 24 in favor of the Packers. Although
Yeah, I
know.
have a similar prediction. I like the Packers 34-27. And yes, Andrew, it is expected, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, that New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones is expected to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. Going to be a weird situation there because they already have McCarthy, who's going to be back from that injury, and Sam Darnold. But speaking of the Dolphins with out Daniel Jones. Are you confident in Skylar Thompson? We saw him fumble a handoff last week. He struggled this entire season. We saw him in the playoffs against the Bills 2 years ago. Just looked like he forgot what he was doing. Are you confident in having him as a backup quarterback going into the playoffs?
There's no one on this planet that should be confident in Skylar Thompson doing anything good for this Dolphins offense. We saw what he did earlier this year while we were without Tua. We saw how he performed in just one snap last week when we needed to take Tua out because we were up by so much and there's no point in him trying to get hurt. It's scary because if the Dolphins know that they can't rely on their second string quarterback to just get the job done, especially when we're up by that much, that's going to be a big issue. So signing Daniel Jones would have been a big help. And again, I'll say what I said last week. I wish that they would have, because having a as reliable as Daniel Jones can be, a better than Skylar Thompson backup quarterback would be very helpful. So, hopefully they'll find someone else down the road. But Skylar Thompson will never be the answer as the second string quarterback.
Yeah, and an article came out from Sports Illustrated that Tyler Huntley clearly wasn't the option, but with Jones being signed, getting someone like Teddy Bridgewater, signing him to be a backup might be an upgrade from Skylar Thompson. Would you tend to agree with that?
I just think more experience is helpful, so sure. I think that the Dolphins aren't in a great situation to sign anyone. And I think Daniel Jones was their real big chance to actually get someone with good NFL starting QB experience to get him as a secondary QB. I think that now we're kind of past that point. It's going to be until next season where we're able to find another guy who can help, because we know Tua is super unpredictable. We never know when he may get hurt again. So we're going to need to make sure that there is a reliable quarterback, and maybe even late stages of the draft next year, we look at taking someone who has some good potential.
Yeah, and we saw Teddy Bridgewater be the backup quarterback of this team 2 years ago, and he got injured as well. So hopefully it's not like that. But Andrew, let's touch on playoff scenarios. The Dolphins have now won 3 straight, putting them back into the playoff hunt. One spot outside the playoffs right now that the Colts lost. Andrew, what do the Dolphins need to do to be able to get in the playoff? And what is a rooting guide that us Dolphins fans, what should we root for this week? What matchups should we watch? Because we're going to need help unless we win out. And me and Andrew, if you guys didn't check it out on Sunday, did a full playoff bracket, full playoff scenario of predicting each game. And the Dolphins had a 0% chance based on that. We have them going 3-2 to finish out, or 4-2 was it? To finish out the last, somewhere with 2 losses. It was probably 5-2 maybe to finish out the season. But I think some games we should watch out for. What games should we watch, Andrew?
Of course, we're going to need to be watching the Denver Broncos, because that is the team still directly ahead of us in the playoff picture. So always going to be rooting against them, although their schedule coming up is easier than we might hope for. Keeping the Raiders in check behind us will always be helpful as well. And I mean, listen, I think that it's just going to be an interesting last couple of weeks. We're currently first man out. So Broncos and Colts. Actually, Colts is the bigger one, because if you don't remember, we lost to the Colts in that heartbreaking game earlier this year. The Colts are directly behind us. They're sitting at 5-7. Since we lost to them, they would have the tie break against us. So if the Colts continue winning, and I believe their schedule is pretty easy as well. I'm just gonna double check that. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, they play the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Patriots.
Titans, Patriots. Yeah. Okay. So always going to be rooting against the Colts. That's going to be one of the big ones. Colts Broncos next week, however, is going to be interesting because we kind of want both teams to lose. So who knows? Maybe root for a tie that week. I don't really know what to tell you.
We don't want a tie.
What would a tie do?
So right now the Colts haven't had their bye, but they have the head-to-head against us. So they're basically one game back right now. But I think if both teams have a tie, it's gonna be harder to jump the Broncos. I think we'd much rather have the Colts win. Um, I think the Colts pretty much have a guarantee win at home against the Patriots, at home against the Jaguars. We just gotta hope they lose one of the Titans and Giants games, and then that'll leapfrog us to 2 games ahead of them as long as we win out. But I personally think that a tie makes it that much harder to jump the Broncos because we can't just beat the Colts and expect to get in. We need the Broncos to drop a game because currently the Broncos are ahead of us and they're 7-5, and that puts them at basically near 1.5 games ahead of us, which we need them to lose in every game they can. So yeah, Broncos and Colts, but also you guys make sure that a team like the Chargers, we're only 2 games back of the Chargers. A team like them, we should be watching for. A team like the Ravens as well. The Ravens did separate themselves with their win Monday night, but even a team like the Chargers definitely should be a team we should watch out for. Come late December when the
Yeah.
playoffs are revealed.
So let's take a look. Biggest games to watch for Week 13: Browns Broncos. If the Browns win that game against the Broncos, our chances go up to over 40% from the 20% it's at. Other important games, we're going to be looking for Patriots to beat the Colts because I don't know how that's going to happen. Falcons beating Chargers, Bengals beating Steelers. Those are going to be the biggest games for this week. Next week, Browns and Steelers. If the Browns can win out, their playoff chances jump a ton as well. Week 15, we're going to be looking for the Titans to beat the Bengals, Giants to beat the Ravens, Colts to beat the Broncos. So interesting. So Colts beating the Broncos would actually help us more in that situation, which would be interesting. And then Buccaneers
Yeah.
beating the Chargers. And for the final couple weeks, biggest games: Browns, Bengals, Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs, Steelers, and to round it out, if
Andrew,
it does
see what it does when you hit tie between Colts, because you can hit tie in the
yeah,
middle.
that would not be good for us.
Yeah. So
And then
as I was,
yeah,
go ahead.
final week 18, just before we talk about that, if it does come down to a week 18 scenario, we're going to need to see the Chiefs beat the Broncos, the Jaguars beat the Colts, the Raiders beat the Chargers, and we win out against the Jets. It's going to be a fun last couple weeks. And of course, we'll go through all these games and what to watch again. But just to quickly reiterate, for this week, you're going to be wanting to pay attention to, of course, Dolphins, Packers, Falcons, Chargers, Patriots, Colts, and Browns, Broncos.
Yeah, and we wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and to enjoy today to the fullest as you can. But if you guys have or tend to watch football on Sundays and not just the Dolphins and pay attention to the rest of the NFL, we are going to be Patriots and Browns fans this week. So make sure you guys put on the Browns jerseys or the Patriots jerseys if you have any, and root for them because that significantly helps our chances, as Andrew mentioned. We hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the day, watch some football, eat some good food, and spend some time with family. Andrew, any final thoughts?
Big game tonight. Again, if we win, we're almost set up for the playoffs. This is a huge game. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the chat that showed up. If you haven't, or if you're not watching the parade right now, go and watch the end of the parade because I think Santa is coming soon. So, yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Eat some good food and fins up.
Fins up.